Quichotte is the 14th novel by Salman Rushdie, published in 2019 and shortlisted for the 2019 Booker Prize. This was at least the third novel that Rushdie has had shortlisted. He won the Booker Prize, I think in 1983 for his book Midnight's Children, and he won the Booker Prize again for the Satanic Verses. And then he went on to win the Booker of Bookers in 1993 for his book Midnight's Children. And in my opinion, he's probably the best living author we have at the moment. The way that he constructs sentences is just beautiful. He just writes very beautifully, and his stories are utterly wonderful. This book, Quichotte, is very much based around the classic book by Amigo de Cervantes' book Don Quixote. It's another pronunciation of Quixote. Quichotte is the same word, and it's very much taken in the same vein as that. It's a person whose mind has kind of been Quixote's mind was kind of addled and twisted by contemporary fiction, and in this book, Quichotte, his mind is kind of addled by daytime TV. And similar to Don Quixote, it's kind of a road trip, like it's someone traveling around, kind of having some adventures, experiencing the world. And Quichotte is traveling around America, experiencing the world. But it's also about a lot more than that. It isn't just a sending up of Don Quixote. It's about the opioid crisis. It's about addiction. It's about mental health problems. It's about sci-fi. And this is kind of my biggest problem with this book, is that it's about too much. There are too many ideas in there. It's unfocused. But Rushdie is an amazing storyteller. It's now his 14th book. He's been doing this a long time. He really knows what he's doing. And if anyone can kind of weave together all these different ideas, and the other big idea in this book is it's a meta book. We have the story of someone traveling around the US, and within this book there is a writer writing this book. And then we have Rushdie, who is choosing between different points of view. So we have a story and the novelist, and then that is all being written by Rushdie. So there's kind of three different layers to this book. So it's a meta narrative, it's a meta novel, and it's also a very postmodern kind of view of a novel. And it's magical realism. It's magical realism in the kind of tradition of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Borges, these kind of books, 100 Years of Solitude. This is Rushdie's kind of vein. And you're often not sure in these books, are these things really happening, or is this the character who's going insane? When one of the characters meets a fairy on a bus, a blue fairy on a bus, you don't know at all if what's happening is really happening, or if it's just existing inside his head. And characters are made up out of, just kind of brought into existence by some of the other characters. And we have the lives of the kind of created character is being interwoven with the life of the author. And at some points I wasn't really sure what events had happened to which one, and that's intentional on Rushdie's part. I think one of the points in this novel is the idea that the writer's life is all novels are to a certain extent autobiographic, and that's his point of using. That's one of his points with the novelist in this book, but also presumably he's talking about himself as well. As with all of Rushdie's books, the writing is fantastic. There's just beautiful use of language in it, and the story is really interesting. It reminded me a little bit of Neil Gaiman's book American Gods, in that kind of traveling around the US in kind of an unfocused way, meeting crazy characters who are kind of maybe real, maybe not real, and just going on a bit of an adventure. But whereas Neil Gaiman's book has kind of got a clear idea and you know what it's about, you don't really know what it's about. Some of the ideas are kind of picked up and dropped a little bit. One of the characters is an opioid, is addicted to opium, addicted to opioids, and that idea was just kind of dropped towards the end of the book. It's kind of forgotten about. And in fact, Rushdie uses whole pages of the book just to rant and rave about the opioid crisis in America, which is a really important thing that should be spoken about. But it makes the whole book kind of feel unfocused. I'm not really sure, well, is this book about the opioid crisis? Is it about mental health? Is it about daytime TV? Is it a sci-fi book? We're not really sure. But if anyone can kind of make this work, it's Rushdie, because he's so good at what he does. He is capable of kind of weaving together all these different ideas and the meta-novelist idea, because he's just an expert on what he does. So it's a really good book. It's really fantastic. It's very much worth reading. It's not up there on the level of some of his other books, but Midnight's Children and Satanic Verses are two of my favorite books in the world. They're really fantastic. And if this book, Quichotte, had been written by someone else, people would be hailing it as a masterpiece, I think. But compared to those other books that he's written before, it's just not at the same level. It's still really good. It's really worth reading. It's really interesting. The writing is fantastic. It's very much worth your time, but you can't expect. Rushdie will probably never write anything at the level of Midnight's Children ever again. But worth your time and definitely worth